Hello guys, welcome to the Trading Parrot. Many people use a recurring buy as their way to enter the market. A recurring buy is a type of bot or strategy where you decide how frequently and how much you want to be buying. Most typically, you will be buying once a week or once every day at certain time of the day and a fixed amount of the asset that you want to accumulate. Although this might seem a very dumb strategy because it doesn't use any TA to enter, it can be really life-changing if you start a recurring buy during the bear market. But in this video, we're gonna look into how can we turn the recurring buy into a more advanced strategy. Think about a hybrid between a recurring buy, incorporating some sort of TA, not just to improve the entries, but also to improve the exits. In today's video, we're gonna write a Pinescript, very basic concepts, no more than 30 lines of code, and we're gonna achieve something like this. This is going to be some sort of strategy where you're going to be buying at better entries and you're going to have an average position size and exit in profit. We're going to be able to define what's going to be the entry for the accumulation. We will be able to control as well how much percentage in profit we require to allow our exit TA to take those profits. And something that we haven't covered ever in this channel, which is also very interesting, we're gonna be taking partial profits as we go on the way up. And a second thing that we have never done in this channel is for the first time, we're gonna start adding into a winning position. If you don't have a background in coding and you have no experience in Pinescript, do not worry because I'm gonna take it easy, step by step, explaining each of the things that I'm going to be doing. And by the end of the video, you will have seen the whole code on the screen, so you should be able to copy all the code. The code that I'm going to show in this video is going to be probably an early version of an actual accumulator script. The future versions of this accumulator, the updates, the bug fixes, and all of that is going to be available for all people in the community from observer and above. But of course, you're welcome to take this initial version from the video and add your own improvements from there, connected to different entries and exit signals. So it's going to be fun. Guys, if you like this kind of content, make sure you are subscribed to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I publish one of these videos. And there are two things that you can do to help this channel to continue growing. Watch this video until the very end and do not go anywhere without leaving a comment down below. If we were to implement recurring buy, it will be really simple. Basically, on each of the candles, we will enter with a fixed amount. And as we are filling those orders, if we are going on the way up, our average position size will follow the price as if it was a moving average. And if we were accumulating on an area like this, we will be pushing our average position size to the downside until eventually the price breaks above our average and we will be in profit. The point is that not all of these candles are the best for accumulation. We are currently on a daily chart, and many times you're going to be buying some tops, and it's not necessarily going to help you average down your position, and therefore it will take longer for you to be in profit. So one of the ideas I had was to use just a simple RSI and only accumulate while the RSI is below the moving average. And that might be a good alternative. As we are above the moving average, we could start closing partially our position as long as we are in profit and start taking some chunks, and that could be our exit strategy as well. Of course, you could disable that and just leave the accumulation side of things and just hold forever if that is your preference as well. But after carefully looking at the RSI, and since last week I fell in love with the Cyclic RSI, which was introduced to me by Justin in the previous stream that we did together, let's have a look at how things will go if we were accumulating based on what the Cyclic RSI says. You will be able to accumulate in this zone, around here, and finally around here. So it looks like it's very good entries. You will be many days not accumulating, but when the indicator says start your accumulation because you are below the lower band, There will be many days that will be the sweetest spot to accumulate. It's just going to become a matter of deciding whether it's better for you to just buy every day and spread your funds into very tiny chunks so you have enough dry powder until the end of the bear market to continue buying that dip and averaging down, or splitting your funds into larger chunks and entering at much more optimized entries using this particular strategy. For example, in regards to the exit strategy, we could say that as long as we are above the upper band, we could start taking some profits. And by carefully looking at this area around here, it makes a lot of sense every time that we are above this line to start taking some chunks. Of course, apart from this area that is very perfect, every time that you hit it, there is some pullback. In this area, there was no pullback after these exits around here. The price continued rising and you took profits, and then you enter around here, which might be higher than your exit. So it's not always going to be perfect, and that's why you start selling little by little on the way up. Don't worry, I will show you how to fine-tune the final parameters that we are going to introduce into the Pinescript to control these aspects so it can match perfectly your own preferences. In the full video, I'm going to stick to the daily time frame, but I got very tempted to look into running this sort of strategy as well with the 50 minutes and lower time frames, and it all comes down to which parameters you use to make sure that you're constantly adding into your position and exiting frequently so it doesn't really turn into a red back holding constantly, which can become a real pain. All right, let's get our hands dirty. I hope you have your laptop next to you. Open the Pine editor below our chart. Make sure that you have the Cyclic RSI on your chart. Remember, you can find it just by typing Cyclic RSI, and you're gonna find this one here that has 8,000 likes. In the Pine editor, click Open, New Strategy. You're gonna see some code like this. This is a default strategy. It's not gonna do what we want to do. In fact, what it's doing by default is looking for a cross of different MAs to take a long, and then it takes a short. Our strategy is not going to take a long and a short. It's going to be entering a long, and then in the next candle, potentially entering another long, and then another long, and then another long. We're going to have an exit condition that, based on certain logic, is going to decide whether it's the time to close partially the position and take some profits. Instead of using this crossover, I'm gonna delete it, and I'm gonna say that we need an input that is going to select a source. This is going to allow us to connect with the Cyclic RSI as an input. By default, you have to write close and give it a name. This is going to be my entry. When it's equals to 1, is going to enter, and I'm gonna call this entry long, and then I'm gonna rename this to exit condition, and I'm gonna do something similar here. I'm gonna say that when the input, a separate input, is equals to 1, we're gonna exit. But this is currently an entry. We need to close the entry long. Notice that we're gonna call entry multiple times, because for as long as this is equals to 1, and that could happen in many consecutive daily candles, we might enter maybe 20 different positions of long. So when you want to close that entry called long, this is going to close the combination of all your cumulative entries that are still unrealized. So here we are not doing an entry short, we just need to decide how much we want to exit. And in order to exit partially, I'm going to use the quantity %. And initially, I'm just going to set it to the number 10, which means that every time that we close the daily candle and the exit condition is true, we are taking 10% of profits. This is what we currently have at the moment. I'm just going to save the script and give it a random name, and I'm going to add it to the chart. So my strategy currently appears here in the chart, and if I hit the settings, you can see that we have an entry and we have an exit. Just for simplicity, allow me to use one of the plugins from the membership. You do not need this plugin to be able to fully implement this strategy. I show you later a workaround. Just make sure that you stick until the end of the video, and I'll show you how to prevent needing this particular plugin. The plugin is called Conditions and is included only in VIP level and higher. I'm gonna add it now. This is going to allow me to speed up the process as well. I need 2 conditions. one for the long and one for the exit. And the first one is going to be that the cyclic RSI is less than the lower band of the cyclic RSI, that one there. So you can see that that condition happens here and here. All these times are times that we are going to use for accumulation. And for exiting, we're going to say that we want the cyclic RSI to be greater than the high band of the cyclic RSI. So this is going to capture moments like this where the RSI is above that band. That seems to be working good. So we can go to our strategy now and we can connect the top signal, which is the entry, and the lower signal, that is the exit. We should be able to see some stuff is going on here. The first thing that seems to be working wrong is that the results are 0.6%. So there must be something wrong, and it's probably to do with the properties that we are using here in the strategy. As you can see, this is using initial capital 1 million, is measuring contracts. We don't have pyramiding enabled yet, therefore we cannot be adding to our position. If you're not familiar with pyramiding, this is a must have if you are thinking to do DCA, because you're going to be pyramiding into your position. And all of these entries are going to be in the same direction. I'm not going to change it from here. I'm going to change it from the code to make sure that our settings are going to persist every time that we save our changes in our script. So let's go back to the editor and let's focus on the strategy settings here at the top. As you can see, strategy supports a long number of different options. I'm going to remove the margin because we are no longer doing this long and short. So I'm going to only add the things that I need. Let's name this Intelligent Accumulator. Currency needs to be in USDT. Let's cover the commission. We need to cover a commission type. So that's going to be strategy, commission, and we're going to use percent. And commission value, we're going to use 0.1. I'm going to set an initial capital of 10,000. I'm going to set my pyramiding to 10 maximum orders in the same direction. Later, we're going to change that directly from the script. This is a starting point. We also need a default quantity type and a default quantity value. This is going to allow us to set the quantity in percentage and therefore spread all our equity into all those orders. That's also going to allow us to do some compounding. So the default quantity type is going to be strategy and percentage of equity. That's how we are going to measure every time that we enter in a position. And our default quantity value is going to be 10%. So let's save these changes. You can see this is the second save here. If we go back to the chart, there seems to be a compiling error, and that's because currency needs to be currency.usdt. Let's save again, and now it seems to be compiling, but there are no results in the backtest. And that's because every time that you save the changes, you're going to have to go back to input and reselect your entry and exit. Unfortunately, that's the way it is with Pinescript. Let's pick them again, and we should be seeing something that makes a little bit more sense. I'm going to double click on the area of the chart here so you can see how this is looking so far. We have done just a few lines of code and we already have something here that seems to be buying every time that you are in blue and seems to be selling every time that you see purple. You can go to the list of trades and look around. There's some positions that are still opening around here. There's a lot of extra things that we're going to do to improve this. You're going to be really impressed. So let's do some early playing with the script. I'm going to click on the script here. So far in our inputs, we only have these two things. And in properties, you can see that all the things that I added to the strategy are appearing. We have commission, pyramid 10, and percentage of equity. So let's zoom out on this and let's see what's the effect of doing a few different tweaks. For example, here I have 10% of the equity per order and I have 10 pyramiding orders. You could play with these parameters straight from the properties and say that each of your orders is going to be of 1% and you're going to have 100 orders, making up for the total equity. And then you can see a completely different curve. You can also make this very small and say that you're going to spread your funds into 200 orders as well, and you can see a different effect. Two things that are not perfect yet. Number one, if you look at the code in the Pinescript that we currently have, We are saying that when we are above the band of the cyclic RSI, we're taking 10% out of the position. But notice that this is not necessarily in profit. It's going to be very difficult to tell now, but I promise you that not all the times that you're above the upper band, you're going to be in profit. Particularly in the bear market, many times around here, you're going to be adding and adding and adding, and you're still going to be in an unrealized loss. Therefore, if you're hitting the exit signal and you're not requiring the strategy to confirm that you are in profit, you're allowing your strategy to take a loss, basically to realize it. In these areas here, for example, this might be a combination of unrealized losses plus some realized losses. How can we control in the code whether we want to accept or not to exit in a loss or not in a loss? And maybe we don't even need to do it as a black and white situation. Maybe we can say, I'm going to allow you to exit as long as my combined position is above maybe 0% realized loss. Or maybe I want to do it after I'm at 1% realized profit, or maybe I allow you to exit as long as you are in an unrealized minus 1% loss. And that's the maximum loss that I'm willing to take. How can we do that? Very simple. We are just going to add 2 extra lines here. I'm going to create a variable that is called the minimum profit. And this is going to symbolize in percentage what's the minimum profit that I'm willing to take. Below that, it won't allow the position to exit, no matter if the technicals are saying that this is the right time to exit. So my minimum profit is going to be determined by what the user says. In this case, we are going to use a number called min profit required to exit, and we're going to say here end strategy. And if you write down %, you're going to find all the percentages that are available. We're going to use the open profit percentage because this one is the current unrealized profit or loss for all the positions together, expressed in a percentage of this calculated formula, which is precisely what I want. So I'm going to say that I want this to be greater than the minimum profit that the user is saying. So now you can see that even if the TA condition is true, if we are not above this minimum profit, then we won't exit with this 10%. The second thing I want to add here is that we are always exiting with 10%. Some of you might want to take 100%, and some of you might want to stick with these tiny chunks of 10% per candle to start taking those profits. So I'm going to create another variable that says exit percentage per candle, and it's going to be another input with a float. I'm going to leave it as default to 100%. I'm going to assume that most of you are going to want to exit with the full position. As long as you have achieved that minimum profit in that next candle, you're going to be just out of the market. Let's call it percentage exit per candle, and let's replace this 10 by the variable. Now you can take that decision from the parameters. And before I save the script, I also want to know 2 things. I want to know what's my average position size, because that's going to allow me to distinguish at what times I'm in profit and at what times I'm in a loss. Plotting that is ridiculously simple. You just say plot strategy and you type down average and you get the average position size, and then you can call it average, and that's it. Let's save this and let's see how we're getting on with these changes. Remember, again, we need to reconnect the entries and the exits. Just by looking here, we can see the 2 new parameters that we have. Let's connect this to the top signal and this to the bottom signal. Let's compress these areas. Very interesting. Now you can see that we are in a profit, but our average position size is this blue line. So that means that with the current parameters that we are using, we've been in a loss since the 9th of December of 2021. So there's clearly something that is set up too aggressively. Let's change the order size to 1% and the number of orders to 100. And you can see that that kind of saved the day. We are only making 23%. So it's very humble results for such a long period of time, but I'm not going to worry right now about the profits. I'm just going to make sure that we complete this tool to turn it into something more profitable. That goes with your own risk aversion. If you zoom in, you're going to see here that these are the areas now that we are accumulating, and the first take profit is occurring around here. The same goes for this area, is accumulating and then selling. Also notice that the sell order is a single one because we have set now the exit per candle to 100%. That means that once it's in profit, let's expand this one, we are in profit around here because we cross above the average position size, and at the same time we are above the upper band, so we are taking profits at the end of this candle, which is great. But we are taking all the profit in one go, and we're not allowing any remaining position open to catch some additional profits. If we start reducing this number to maybe 80%, that means that we're going to take 80% on the first candle that meets that condition, and then we're going to take 80% of the remaining open position, and so on until it runs out of open position. Every time you change these things, you are going to experience some changes in the performance. If you want to do this back to 10% to allow the strategy to take much longer, you're going to see many exit days, and little by little it's going to be offloading the Bitcoin. But then you can see situations like this. You accumulated this whole period and you were exiting all this period, but then you started accumulated, in fact, now at a higher price. And that is another aspect that I think I would like to control. Maybe my preference is to only accumulate when I'm buying below my average price, because I might only want to average down my position and bring this average all the time lower and lower. But in this case, you can see that we are buying at these prices and at these prices, but our average is here. So we're bringing the average up. And many investors might freak out that you're buying at a price that is more expensive than your current average. And that's completely a preference up to you. Some people are going to find that too much risk to chase the price on the way up. And some other people are going to be so bullish that they just want to accumulate all the way going up and never taking profits. Let's create another variable to allow the user to make that decision. It's going to be called add while in profit. It's going to be an input with a boolean. By default, it's going to be false, add while in profit. And we're going to append this to my long condition, and all this is going to be within those parentheses. And I'm going to say either this condition is switch off or it needs to be true. And how do I determine that I am below the average price? I just need to say that the close of the price is below my strategy average position price. That is precisely the line that we were plotting here. If we save this, we're going to find that there is a problem. Now, if we connect the signals, you're going to notice that it won't take any trade. And the reason is very silly. It's just because if we are controlling this, when we haven't entered any position, this value is going to just give not a number and it won't enter anything. We need to create another, or if there are no trades, I allow you to enter. But if there are already trades open, then it's going to have to check all these things here. Save these changes. Let's connect again our conditions, and this all change again. So let's change it. So now the condition is switch off, the while in profit. So it's only entering below this line, which represents our average entry price. If we don't allow to add while in profit, we get 23%. And if we select it, we get 14. We can change the exit per candle, and now we are getting 64. We are not allowing to enter while we are in profit. That's how we are getting that number. If we exit with a very small amount, we immediately get stuck in the strategy. We can allow to exit maybe in a loss, for example, at the maximum minus 5%, or we can become more aggressive and say, I won't allow you to exit unless you are at 2% profits. The one I showed you initially in the video was set in this way, doing 2.5 with 40 maximum number of orders. So that looks this way, but the question is, how did I find those numbers? And for that, the only thing I was missing from this script was to know how many orders I need really, because you may put this to 0.5 and then you're going to need 200 orders to fully use the 100%. But how do you know if you really ever use 200 orders? We don't want to put so many small tiny orders and then never get used in the past, especially throughout more than 3 years. So in order to fine-tune this, I needed to know what was the maximum number of orders that were used with particularly this condition, and then based on the past performance, make a decision on how many orders I think is sensible to use. Let's make that final change to the Pinescript. We are going to need to be tracking a number that is going to be called the max entries. That number is going to symbolize at all times what has been the maximum number of orders that have been used. This is going to start as the number 0, calculated as the maximum between strategy, open trades, and the previous number of maximum entries. And then we are going to plot max entries, but this time we're going to display it just in the data window. I don't want this to be plotted in the chart. I can always go to the data window, read that number, and know that out of my 200 entries, I've been only using a maximum of maybe 60. And I will use that data to then adjust my parameters. So since we have already defined this variable and we are reassigning a new value, we need to use this. And there's another thing that we need to do, which is we need to keep track of that number. We always need to read the value from the previous candle and then pass it on to the next candle. If the max entries was defined in the previous candle, I can do that by checking that is not an undefined number in the previous candle. And if it's not, then I'm going to pass it to the current candle. Now I can pass on the value of the previous candle of max entries to the current candle, and I can compare it to the current one and then update it accordingly. And then I can plot it. Now we can expand the data window here, and we can see that the max entries that we have ever seen is 58. We've been wasting a lot of resources just by having 200 orders. So we can drop this to 58. If you want to calculate the percentage of equity out of your 100% to fill 58 orders, we can just say, let's divide 100% by 58, and we get 1.72. So let's put 172 here, and now we are using 58 orders here and also here. I change it to 2.5 and 40 orders. That will resonate with the way I will trade it. For example, in here, we are constantly accumulating at very great times, and then we are exiting on the way up. That's giving 100% profits. It's a very extended period of time. It's not the most aggressive setup. It could use some leverage. Now, as promised, I'm going to show you how you can do this without the conditions. Instead of using this entry with the 1, what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 separate sources. We're not going to call them entry and exit. They're just going to be CRSI, upper and lower band, and they don't need to be compared to 1 anymore. We're just going to call them CRSI. This is going to be called upper, this one lower, and we're going to change here and say that the CRSI needs to be below the lower for our entry, and in here we're going to say that the CRSI needs to be above the upper. Sorry, there's some typo here. It's CRSI. Let's save the changes, and instead of using conditions, let's put this back to 2.5 and 40. Now instead of having my condition script, this has become specialized just on the CRSI, which is fine. Let's track the CRSI here. Let's track the upper band and the lower band. And we were using 0.1 here, and this was 20. And now we're seeing the same results that we saw by using conditions. The beauty of conditions, or also my other plugin events, is that it's allowing me to very quickly connect external indicators without having to do any changes. So if later I decide to do it with RSI, instead of having to change the code, I just wire up my conditions to the RSI and we can get completely different results. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to continue adding a few extra things to the script. For example, I'm going to allow it to connect to Weak Hunter so the full strategy can be automated and then run for free without having to pay any fees for trading platform. If you want that final version of the copy that's going to be revisited, and if we find any bugs, we are also going to maintain it in a good shape, and you also want access to that additional code to be able to automate with bots, consider supporting the channel by joining as an observer, and you will get access to add the script and run it in your own TradingView account. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.